Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Soul Seekers podcast, where we believe that hunting has the power to transform lives through primal adventure as we share our mission of mentorship is conservation. To learn more about everything we do, check out our show on Carbon TV or go to soulseekersnation.com. Freedom on, everybody, and stay soulful. If you want to take your shooting experience to the next level, then check out Coltac gear for 100% made in America products. Coltac manufactures specialty gear designed for long-range shooting, hunting, and other tactical applications. From their support bags, suppressor covers, shooting mats, and a whole lot more, Coltac is creating tough, durable, and innovative gear for both civilian and professional markets. Go to coltac.com to see all that they have to offer. That's cole-tac.com. If you are looking to get a new rifle or build your own, look no further than Kelbley's. Kelbley's actions and rifles have a higher level of accuracy and hold 92 world records set on either one of their rifles or rifle actions. Whether you're looking for an ultralight mountain rifle or wanting to compete in precision rifle shooting, Kelbley's has you covered. Go to kelbley.com to find out more or give them a call as their customer service is the best. That's KELBLY.com. Kelbley's. If you're looking to take your hunting to another level, there's no better way to do it than by subscribing to onX Hunt. If you want to get better at hunting and go deeper into your scouting, onX is the #1 GPS app for that. Join the millions of hunters who trust onX Hunt to find more game, discover new access, and hunt smarter. If you want to know more about onX, go to onxmaps.com/hunt or download their app today for a free trial. If you are wanting to become more accurate and deadly with your shooting, one of the best things you can do is upgrade your trigger with a Timney. Timney triggers are 100% made in America and have been since their founding, providing a crisp, reliable, and repeatable trigger break every time. I'll be shooting Timney triggers in my guns this year, and I hope you'll join me in shooting the world's finest trigger. Go to timneytriggers.com to get yours today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Soul Seekers podcast. And for the first time in quite a while, this is the first episode we're releasing that wasn't recorded at SHOT Show. However, this is an episode with somebody who I met and became friends with at SHOT Show, and that is the digital editor for Shooting Times and Firearms News out of the great state of Montana, my friend Colton Bagnoli, not to be confused with Bagnoli because, you don't want to church it up too much. But anyways, we're going to have a great time tonight. We're talking bourbon. We're talking shooting, hunting, the outdoors, and so much more. This is going to be a great episode. I'm really excited to bring it to you because as I got to know Colton and spending time with him, I found him to be quite a fascinating person with a lot of different experiences and perspectives on the world. So if you follow along on Instagram at all, you might know him as Pap Winkle. If you're familiar with anyone in the whiskey bourbon world, a little Pappy Van Winkle. So without further ado, the man of the hour, Colton Bagnoli. How you doing, brother?
Good, man. That was quite the introduction. I don't know if I quite deserve that, but I appreciate it.
And I love that. I'm a hype man in my other job. Gotta hype people up. Like I'm a DJ. Did you know that? Did I share that with you?
No, I did not know that.
Oh yeah,
We didn't talk about that.
yeah. DJ Night Train. Choo choo. Got to get on it, baby.
Nice.
Yeah, I've been doing that for years. Every school teacher has to have a part-time job, and I figured if I'm gonna do a part-time job, I might as well really start a party and get after it. So
Yeah.
got into DJing weddings, quinceañeras, corporate
I
events.
always was told that school teachers are the wildest bunch.
They're the weirdest bunch, that's for sure. But yeah, there's definitely like the movie. You have young kids, The Secret Life of Pets.
Oh yeah.
It's like Secret Life of School Teachers.
Yeah.
Yeah, just
Now, there's quite a few girls I went to high school with that had quite the lifestyle, and they're all surprisingly school teachers now. It's like I wouldn't have figured that one out, but good for you.
right. Oh man. Well, speaking of going to school, where did you grow up at?
So I grew up in Arizona, specifically like Chandler Mesa area, just outside of Phoenix.
Yeah.
Yeah, born and raised down there, and grew up Yeah. I mean, in the city, but spent a lot of time in the outdoors. I mean, that was a big thing for my family, was just getting out of the heat and getting out of Phoenix and heading up into the mountains around in Arizona. So just grew up hunting and fishing when my dad wasn't working to take us out, big family weekends and trips, and just how it all started for me.
Dude, that's cool. I want to break into that a little bit more because I'm the father of three young boys, 10, 8, and soon to be 6. And everyone is like, oh, dude, 3 boys, that's awesome. And I also agree. However, with ages so close together, it's very challenging, at least for me, to feel like I can dedicate good time to each individual boy without the younger ones being like, oh, I'm getting left out again, or,
Yeah.
were you raised? You said were raised as a hunter and went with your dad and your family and stuff like that. Brothers and sisters, like how was that dynamic?
Yeah, so I had an older sister who's 2 years older, and I had a younger brother who's 2 years younger. And I also, like we talked about when we met up at SHOT, I have just turned 11-year-old daughter, an 8-year-old son, soon to be 9, and a 4-year-old daughter, soon to be 5. They're all got birthdays coming up real soon. So I know the feel, man. Like getting that time, that individual time is like so critical, and it's so hard because they all, like, especially with my kids, they all want to hunt. They
Yeah.
all want to fish. They don't want to be left out. Like they want to be included in all of it. They want to go bear hunting. They want to go fly fishing, and this everything. And growing up, my sister could care less about hunting and fishing. So that was an easy one for me just because there's no competition. My brother did hunt and fish. And my dad did the best he could. I mean, he didn't make much money. He's a roofer. And so we were really tight. Growing up, you don't realize it, until you're older,
Hmm.
and appreciate it. But I mean, yeah, hunting trips for us back then were, take you out of school on a Friday, drive up to wherever the hunt was, Thursday night, hunt Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and back to school by Monday. So everything was kind of like turn and burns. There was just not much, nothing like what it is today for people getting into hunting. They just have no idea how good they have it. And resources that are available compared to as a kid going out hunting and just, roughing it like way harder. You just didn't have the clothes, you don't have the gear, right? It's just a totally different struggle back then. So I have a huge appreciation for it now, growing up in that and seeing what we have. I've got uh, that time span in hunting and fishing where it's like, man, before rangefinders, before technology was in hunting, it's been a unique ride to see it all, like a lot of people, but
Yeah.
it's just crazy the huge growth in hunting and fishing. There's so many people that are just like, how did you hunt without a rangefinder? You know, like, yes, it was tough.
Shots were a lot closer. Well, you know what's
Shots.
interesting? That probably ties into the whole why long distance shooting and long distance hunting has become so popular. And I never
Oh yeah.
understood why there was so much pushback. I've been in the game a decade, right? I got into the game when there was rangefinders. I got into the game when there was calibers that were meant to stretch the distance and shoot at long range. I never really thought about, what was the max length shot for somebody that hunted back in the day? Did they sight in at 33 yards and shoot out to 300 and hope their bullet shot flat enough to be able to hit a target? Or, this is really, that's a topic I don't think we've ever talked about on this podcast.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've talked about it with some guys, not necessarily in podcasts, maybe a little bit, but it's something we talk about a lot, just like remembering back to, I mean, obviously when I started hunting, we just had like grandpa's old 30-06, a 30-30, a 308. And yeah, man, 100 yard zero on a pipe plate and you were good to go. If it was a little bit further than 100 yards based on what you thought, you held top of its back, that type of stuff. And you missed way more deer than you hit. But then as I got older and started to hang out with guys that were kind of a little bit smarter, and wouldn't say smarter, just had different tools and different ideas, started shooting more like 25-06s and flatter shooting rifles, putting a 200 yard zero on there and really cranking up the speed on flatter shooting rifles so that, because you didn't have a rangefinder. So if there's a coos deer standing at, 300 or 400 yards, if you're shooting a, standard 270 or a 30-06 or something like that, coos deer's a small deer, man. They're tiny. So like you got a really good chance at missing it if you don't have the right stuff. So I started hunting with guys that were dialing it in, man, 25 284s and all kinds of wildcats. And that's what really got me into the hunting stuff, is watching these guys shoot deer at like 400 or 500 yards, like with one shot clean. And it's like, dude, this is like magic, because you don't have rangefinders. Like, just think about it. You don't have a turret you can dial, and you don't have a rangefinder. You just see a deer on a hillside and you're just like, I think he's 400. A lot of guys were really good at guessing, but if you had your setup dialed, you knew like what the tensions were on your duplex reticle, where that reticle comes down and comes to that first point. You would go out and shoot at rocks and stuff that you pace out at 350 yards. You're like, all right, the point of that duplex is 325.
Yeah.
On this power or whatever. So, I mean, we figured out ways to make it work. But yeah, man, it's so much easier today with ballistic apps and rangefinders, and yeah, man, not even the same game.
Do you think that makes hunters better nowadays, or do you think they were better before because more often than not they had to get closer?
I think hunters were better hunters back then. I think hunters like to think they're better hunters because they're more successful because of the technology, and the advancements.
Yeah.
There's better shooters. But as far as better hunters, I don't think most are better hunters. I mean, some of the stuff guys are using now, using drones and using stuff to locate animals, the stuff people are doing nowadays is just, you're not a hunter. You're just, I got strong opinions about a lot of that stuff.
Share them. I love good conversation, and here's the thing. Iron sharpens iron, right? So we're never actually going to be able to sharpen our perspective or our talking points if we don't actually hear a different thought process. So,
right.
Go ahead, let it rip. I'm really interested.
Well, it's, there's just so much technology, right? I mean, you look at thermal and drones and all the stuff that's out there, and in some cases, trail cameras, forever were like a huge staple, and a lot of states are banning them now because you're taking away an animal's ability to move, freely without detection, right? So it comes back to this, like, ethics, morals and hunting. When I grew up as a hunter, you were very ethical. You only took shots, you felt comfortable. You had a very high percentage of killing that animal, right? And you just didn't do things that were considered unethical. Nowadays, that scope has just opened up so much because you've got guys that can run 400 or 500 trail cameras, an outfitter, and they can cover a whole area's water sources and take away that animal's ability to move without detection, right? So is that really like, are you a better hunter? Not really, right? You use technology as an advantage. If you're flying drones and locating animals with a drone that you can't glass because you're using a drone, are you a better hunter? No, you're not a better hunter. You might be more successful. You might put bigger animals in the dirt, but you're not a better hunter. Like, in my perspective, right? Just because you kill big stuff on Instagram or on Facebook or whatever, it doesn't mean you're a better hunter if you're using technology and using other things, smarter, not harder. You hear guys say that,
Yeah.
Okay. But like when it comes down to the terminology of being a hunter, like someone pursuing animals, like, man, they were taking away so many advantages of the animal. It's just kind of like, where's the playing field at, and where's it going to go? Like, eventually, hunter success is just going to continue to increase. And when game and fish management systems are like built around like a 20 or 30 or 40 or 50% hunt success, and now it's 70, 80, 90, 100%, dude, we're going to start whittling ourselves out of business, right? You ain't going to be able to have a tag. It's going to be harder than it is now when hunter success is that high, right? With all these tools, and it's not everybody, right? Like, most guys probably aren't even thinking about using drones, but I know that there's people using them illegally. Some are using them legally out seasons, but some are using them during seasons. And, it's total bullshit, in my opinion. It's just ridiculous. But then they'll take a picture of a 200-inch deer and slap it up on the interwebs, and everyone's like, oh my God, he's the greatest hunter ever. It's like, well, he probably poached it, or he probably trespassed to kill it. I'm so jaded anymore.
Dude, I was going to say, dude, you sound pretty glass is half empty.
Dude, well, it's just like, just recently I just found out a bunch of dudes that I used to kind of look up to. Like, I don't look up to many people, right? Like, everyone puts their pants on the same, right? I mean, we all have our flaws, we all have our strengths, we all, we're all just human, right?
Yeah.
But there's some guys that I was like, man, these guys are doing it right. They're hardcore hunters and they're dedicated and they're doing it right. And then I found out that they were actually kind of cheating and in some gray areas. And it just kind of like deflated me a little bit more, where it's just like, man, like how many people are out there? Because it just seems like every year more and more, you know, people you see on social media are getting pinched for poaching, you know, or wildlife violations. And it's just like, you know, they're all just doing it just for the fame, right? I
Yeah.
mean, just like what's it really matter that much that you need to go out and break rules and or even be, maybe you're not breaking rules, maybe you're just in a gray area, you know, like, you know, you're legal, but still, it's just like, do you really need to push it that far? And then call yourself a great hunter. Like the guys that are out there, and it's like, yeah, I shoot big animals out of a high fenced area, and yeah, that's just what I do. You know, they make no bones about it. They're not trying to,
Right.
you know, elaborate it and make it look like they're hunting DIY, you know, free range. It's like, yeah, shoot giant animals out of pen and I'm cool with it. Cool, right on. But the second you start just bending stuff, it's just as of lately, it's just been grinding at me a little bit more, just because it's like an ongoing thing, and it's getting worse. Like people are seeing it and just starting to really expand it out there, and it's just kind of like just disheartening, I guess, more than anything.
How recently is this? Because it seems like it's pretty fresh on you. Was it
Like
like
this week,
this week? Yeah, that makes sense. That makes
yeah,
sense. Bummer. Well, I'll tell you this. Um, I am a proponent of, how do I say this? When it comes to fly fishing, and I use fishing as an example. You're a fisherman as well. You know what I'm
right,
talking about.
yeah,
I don't like people that are purists when it comes to like fishing. Like, oh, if you're not fly fishing, if it's not catch and release, if it's not barbless, you know, like you're not tying your
right,
own flies, you're not doing it right. Like, I'm not a fan of
well,
that.
right.
I am a let's open it up to community. Let's be supportive of people and all that. At the same time, I understand what you're saying and I can see your perspective. Um, I would say I disagree, though. I don't necessarily think that we're going to end up taking hunting away or killing ourselves out of the out of the ability. Andrew McKeon over at Outdoor Life, he says one of the best things and the only reason why he hunts. He said if he knew what the outcome was going to be, he wouldn't hunt. He says it's the unknown that makes it fun. It's the
Oh
unknown
yeah,
that presents it to be that adventure. Because if you're like, I'm just going,
totally.
I know my end destination, I know exactly how I'm going to get there, my play and all this, like it, it, it just doesn't seem as real. What's your take on that?
No, I mean that's a huge part of it for me. I mean, I love just being out there, right? I mean, obviously, we all want to be successful, right? We all want to, you
Yeah,
know, like I live off of game meat. My family, my kids eat venison every week. I mean,
yeah.
it's what I feed my family on, whether it's whitetail does, which we get a lot of tags for here in Montana, or, you know, buck meat, antelope meat, bear meat, mountain lion. I mean, we eat it all, right?
Hmm.
Uh, so yeah, I mean, you know, I spend enough time. I've been doing this for, you know, over 30 years. So it's like, kill a few animals a year, so you get enough meat, right? But it's never one of those things where like I won't even shoot deer out of my yard, right? Or turkeys. I got deer and turkeys in my yard all the time, and it's just not a hunt to me. It's just like it's just not the same. Like, yeah, it's legal. Yeah, I can do it. Like, yeah, I've got the land to support it, but it's just not a hunt. It's like there's like you said, there's no the unknowns. Like you've got to go out there and earn it and work for it. It's like the way my perspective, right?
So then your perspective tying into the game cams is like if you know every inch of that mountainside and you know the travel because of all the different game cams, you're not a proponent of that because it takes away the unknown.
I mean, for me personally, like have I run cameras? Yeah, I've run them. I mean, they're fun. I run them in the off season with my uncle and my son, and and we love seeing, you know, what's out there, and you know, seeing wolves and grizzly bears on our cameras all the time, you know, and big bucks that you never see during season, of course. You know, that's just the way it is
Right.
here. But in certain areas, I mean, I speak specifically like Arizona, New Mexico, Utah, like areas where animals are like super dependent upon water. Like if there's
Ah,
36 water holes in a unit and you have 5 cameras on every single water hole, there's not much opportunity for an animal to elude you, right? You're kind of taking away the unknown and that animal's ability, in my perspective, right? And
right.
and it's just in that limited space, right? Like in Montana, Idaho, places I hunt now, man, you could run as many cameras as you want. It's not going to give you an advantage, right? Um, flying a drone, you're not going to get an advantage. There's so much dense foliage, and trees that it's just not going to be an advantage. But again, you go into the Southwest and stuff where it's more open and more animals are dependent upon the water. You are really whittling down, the animal's ability to elude you, and kind of really stacking the odds in your favor. And I just think it's just, for me personally, it's not quite right. And also a lot of them are bow hunters. So under Pope and Young, if you're entering animals in Pope and Young, ethical fair chase, there's a whole stem of rules on there, and guys are, seem to be lying about kind of what they're doing and how they're doing it. For what it's worth.
I love it. I love it. So what's your take on Onyx? Because Onyx has revolutionized hunting.
Oh, yeah.
Like, and there's a lot of people. Let me retract that statement. There are people that think Onyx is an unfair advantage. Have you come across any of those?
I don't see how it would be an unfair. What's their basis on it being an unfair advantage? I use Onyx and I love it. I have pins all over it, and the guy who's running all that stuff has all my trapping spots and all my spots,
Yeah.
It's all in the database, right? And it's just kind of like,
it all comes down to the ability to know a place is so well that it creates this whole, it rather than going into the unknown.
the guys I know who are like exceptional hunters, they were exceptional hunters and are extremely successful before Onyx and after Onyx. I mean, I love it because you can just mark so much data and have it referenced there, because as you get older, like you start to forget things and you're like, man, where was that freaking draw that scrape was in? So yeah, I can see where it's helpful in keeping dibs on all this stuff. But as far as, if you're hunting public land, dude, it doesn't matter if you have all the pins of every trail around there. You still got to try to be in the right area as that animal.
Yeah.
Like I said, and in Montana, I don't think there's an advantage to it because I've got lots of spots pinned, and I hunt my tail off to get a mature whitetail buck anymore, just because there's so many people out there driving roads and now hiking every closed road. There's you got to get up at 4 a.m. to get a locked gate access spot before it's lined up with trucks. It's ridiculous the amount of people out there, and yeah, it's great for hunting, but there's just a lot of people out there, a lot of competition.
What do you think about the concept of locked gates? We're shifting gears off of the whole technology, more like the public land access, which is very hot topic lately with Doge and all that. What do you think about the fact that it's public land, but it's restricted?
So are you talking access? Like the locked gates I'm speaking to specifically are like Montana's predominantly like private land, like timber company. So it's privately owned timber
that's open to the public.
But it's open to the public for hunting. So the roads are all gated off, so you don't drive back there.
Okay.
You can walk in there and hunt, do whatever you want. You just can't cut down trees or drive back there, right? But what you're speaking to, like the amount of BLM and state trust land and national forests that's landlocked. Yeah, man, that's a huge issue. And I know some guys that benefit extremely well from the fact that they have a lot of land locked up that nobody else can get to without, you can get to it, but it's a lot of work, and there's a lot easier ways to get to it, but they've got it all locked down. Is that right? No. But it's just like, there's nothing. It's a federal move. You've got to get the government to make things work, and how the way those laws were written back in the day with all that 1 square mile checkerboarded stuff being spread out, I don't know how they can fix that, when people own land, and unless they rewrite laws about the corner crossing and unlock it, I don't know how it's going to get fixed. That's a huge problem.
Right. You can imagine just like a bunch of like fence corners where ladders or staircases over each corner, just be like, you can cross like a lot of this only stuff, right here.
Yeah. And there's a lot of stuff that's like, most of the stuff I hunt that's checkerboard, there's not a fence, right? There's not fences like every single, gridded quarter mile, or every gridded mile on a topo. So it's just like, how would you know where you're at? I mean, yeah, you can follow it with OnX and walk through it, but yeah,
That
it's
goes
not
back
a,
to the technology advantage, right?
yeah, it's huge. But you know, you got all these landowners that are just like, yeah, no, it's not happening, and they're not going to let you through, whether it's checkerboard or not. But the other side of that is there's a lot of land that's not checkerboarded. We're talking what, I don't forgot how many millions acres they say that are just locked up. I know areas in Arizona that, dude, it's not even checkerboard. It's just straight like open federal lands, but the roads around the mountain have locked it all up.
Mm,
And I've got a huge issue with that. I mean, I shouldn't have to take a helicopter and land in the middle of it to be able to access federal land. Like that's not
yeah.
kosher in my opinion.
Yeah, whatever happened to the concept of easements, right? I have a
Right.
freaking easement in my yard because of a pipeline company,
Well,
So,
there's a lot of it going on in Montana now too, where you see a lot of these like Californians and Texans and a lot of these huge money people are coming in and buying up massive chunks of land, and developers trying to be like, hey, if we buy all this land, if this is happening in Montana right now in a lot of places, these developers are coming in saying, if we buy up all this timber company land, we buy all this up, we encircle this whole area, then we have all this whole mountain range that's now basically like private, even though, it's not, but you just can't access it.
yeah.
And so they're just literally building like these future, areas up with landlocking a whole bunch of land. And
Yep.
it's going to be a huge problem one day.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really fascinating what's happening right now. I think people, as much as people don't like the political quote unquote divide in the country, the beautiful part about it is that it's making people actually have to understand issues, or at least attempt to understand issues,
Yeah.
because a lot of times it was head under the sand and ignorance is bliss and, you know, go along to get along. Now it's like, no, you actually need to know your stuff. And
Yep.
if we're not advocating for it constantly talking about the pros, the cons, you know, the benefits of it, then we're doing the things that we love a disservice, right?
Yeah.
And here at Soul Seekers, we're constantly talking about mentorship as conservation. Well, mentorship is not just taking somebody hunting. Mentorship is talking points, explanations, sharing experiences and perspectives, inspiring. That's mentorship. It's
Right.
not just, hey man, there's an animal, I'll take it and you can shoot it and kill it, right? And
Yep.
that gets lost on the masses at times. They're like, oh dude, mentorship, I'm not giving up a hunt to go take somebody and teach them because my time is valuable and I only got this one weekend, or you know
Oh, totally. Well, no, you see a lot of guys mentoring, like the air quotes, mentoring hunts. And basically, they take somebody out with their rifle that
hmm
they've got the dope, and it's like, a 900-yard rifle. And they're just like, all right, there's the deer, 750 yards, dial the dope, do everything, have them pull the trigger. And they're like, good job, you're a deer hunter.
yeah.
Dude, you can teach him anything.
You're a
Like
trigger
you
man.
give them you gave them an experience, but they didn't learn anything. They can't go replicate that next weekend or next year. So it's just like, what did you really teach them, and what did you really mentor them in terms of like, continuing the hunting tradition? Yeah, they're interested now, but are they going to go buy a $10,000 Gunworks rifle setup? Probably not. you know, and so I see guys doing it all the time, and I'm like, that's not helping them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's cool to get them experience, like, and get them in, but like, you got to set them up for success, and that's from building it up. Like, hey, this is how we do things, and this is why we do the things that we do, and
hmm
and and walk them through the whole process.
Yeah. I will say, through having a lot of experiences in the mentorship world, um, it does take two to tango, right? Like we need to
Well,
provide experiences and we need to make sure we see things through. And at the same time, you have to have somebody who wants to learn how to hunt. Be-
everybody wants the easy button. Who doesn't want to go out and just shoot a deer the first morning and just be like, all right, cool, let's go back to the cabin,
right.
you know, drink
Right.
some beer. Like, yeah, there's a lot of people that want that too, for sure.
Yeah. It took me 4 years to kill my first big game animal once I became a licensed hunter.
Yeah.
4 years. That was a long time. And for the
Yeah,
longest time, I killed more black bears than I did deer, which is like blows people away when I tell them that, yeah, I was having more success hunting black bear. I understood the concept a whole lot more. Or maybe it was because that in black bear season, it's like as long as it doesn't have cubs with it, shoot it, you know? And
yeah,
people are like, oh, dude, shooting a small bear or whatever. It's like, dude, I'm just getting my feet started. I'm just getting
yeah,
it going. I'm not that
yeah,
fourth stage of a hunter where I'm looking for classification and, you know,
yeah. They're bear shaming. Oh,
yeah,
your bear's not big.
bear shaming. I don't know. Well,
Oh, you shot it over. You shot it over bait. That's not a bear hunt.
right.
You shot it with hounds. That's not a bear hunt.
Oh, I can't wait.
Okay,
I can't wait to hunt bears over hounds. Really excited for
it's
that.
I've done quite a few like lion hunts and bear hunts and ran a lot of dogs back in my Arizona days. And man, bear hunts can get western really fast, especially southwestern bear hunts where the big bears don't tree.
They stay on the
They
ground and just stand the
stay on the
ground.
ground. Man, it can get western really, really fast. Hard on dogs, but
Yeah,
it's an experience. It's crazy.
man. Well, let's digress a little bit and let's go back to the beginning of your origin story. You're talking about, you mentioned mentorship and what it means to actually correctly mentor somebody and get them excited about hunting and all that. So let's talk about your journey into hunting and how you said you were raised by a father who hunted. So was it
Yep.
generational? Was it a grandpa to father to son? Was it, tell us the story.
Yeah. So my grandfather, man, he grew up. It's been so long since we go back that far, but his family migrated over from Italy, right, and lived over on the East Coast, and then he kind of came out here, was in the Navy, and came out to the West and settled down in Arizona, and was a roofer, and got into hunting with some guys. They were like, "Hey, we're going hunting." So then he would go out. He went out and bought some rifles, and started hunting with these guys. And then he had 9 kids, so started teaching his boys how to hunt. And so obviously my dad was one of them. And so by the time I'm 10, my dad had me really young. So when I was 10 and legal to hunt, he was like 30. Right. And so yeah, just going out hunting with my dad and my uncles, and just and hunting back then was like it's so not even the same. It's the same, but it's not, right?
Yeah.
Like
I don't know. Talk
today,
about it. I don't have that experience. Tell
yeah.
yeah.
So like when we'd go hunting, like you might have some binoculars, but they'd be like 735 Pascos or, some like just junk, right? But that's what there was. I mean, yeah, there was some nicer, Swarovskis came on scene and really developed, but I mean, we're talking before a lot of this stuff was really big. And so it wasn't really much a glassing game. There wasn't tripods, there wasn't really a lot of bipods on rifles. It was like I said, it wasn't laser rangefinder. So there was a lot of walking around aimlessly and hoping you ran into a deer or a bull elk or whatever you had a tag for, right? And so back then there's a lot of deer in Arizona, way more deer than there is now. And it wasn't hard to find deer per se, but it's just different studies covered lots of miles. And so like as a little kid, you're just following your dad along with a canteen of water and some sardines and a granola bar or peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and you're just like walking along following dad, with a gun. Doesn't even have bullets in it probably.
Yeah.
And until he found something or you saw something, and that's how it went down. But I mean, I remember shooting my first deer when I was 10, and my uncle and I were walking along this really foggy, rainy day, and this group of mule deer just kind of feed out. So foggy and rainy, they were like, I can't remember how far they were. I mean, in my mind, they were really close, like 150, 200 yards. And I remember him walking out, and there's a spike, and he's like, "Hey, there's a spike in the back." And so he gets down on all fours because we're on the side of a hill, and I'm just like getting down, shooting off the top of his back. And again, we don't have laser range finders, I'm like, we're talking like a 3x9, like Weaver or Redfield back
Yeah.
then. Most people look at that today and be like, "What is like you? This is broken. This is an antique." Like that's what we had, right? And I'm not even like getting back. I'm 42. I'll be 42 next month, and I mean, I know those guys that are in their 60s and they're like, "Oh yeah, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about." I was hunting before even that stuff, but yeah, so I found the deer, shot, hit him. He ran. I shot him again. It was a 243. I don't know how many times I shot at that deer, but I killed him. He had a bunch of holes in him. But it's just like, oh, finally got a deer, and it's just like it's super exciting and super fun, and it just like definitely solidifies like that desire to hunt for me. It's just like this is all I want to do.
Mm.
And it was wet. We had to carry this whole deer out. We didn't know how to like debone animals. You just carried them out whole on the yucca pole, like in the Southwest. That's just what you did. So it's just a totally different experience to learn. And like we hunted elk, deer, antelope. I didn't draw an antelope tag down there until I was in my 20s, but javelina every year. And so you just would go through the process of just learning these different animals from my dad. Just like, hey, javelina like to be out on the south facing slopes in the sun because it's cold and they don't have, fat or fur. So you're just like, okay. So, you just start figuring out little patterns of where you see animals and kind of piecing it all together. And it's all just like, monkey see, monkey do. I just watch what my dad does and then you just do it. Read a lot of books and hunting magazines and try to figure stuff out. But a lot of that stuff was written about eastern whitetail. It doesn't really have much of an application for Coues deer in the Southwest. So, later into the 90s and stuff, like you started seeing more, information being put out. More guys started using tripods to support glass, and then after that, by about the end of the 90s, into the 2000s, it was just full on uphill progress from there. Just huge advancements in hunting and technology, and people just started stacking critters.
Fascinating. Fascinating. So what was it that hooked you on hunting? Like what has hunting done for you that you're like, it's the best. That's all I want to do.
For me as a kid, it was just like being in the woods with my dad. I mean, I remember it's like that was what it was all about. Like I didn't care what we were hunting. When my dad didn't hunt small game, like most people start out on small game or cut the teeth on small game squirrels, right? My dad didn't even he's like, no, like we're gonna go hunt deer because we're actually feeding a family. So we need to go shoot as many, deer as we legally can, or we elk tags. We did a lot of cow elk hunting. It's just like we just need to get meat. So it was just about being out in the woods and just, the outdoors, I think, is just a special place for a lot of people for a lot of different reasons. But just like as a kid out back then, you just don't know. It's like what you were saying. Is that Andrew? You were saying from Outdoor Life?
Oh yeah. Yep.
Um, just the unknown. You're just like, I shot my first elk when I was 11, 12, something like that. And I remember shooting this cow in the middle of the woods. I have no idea where I'm at. Like I'm just following my dad. And he's like, all right, I'm going to go get the truck. It's dark.
Mm-hmm.
It's dark. And I'm like 11 or 12. And he just sets down this pack and stuff with the elk. He's like, just wait here. I'll be back. We walked for seemed like hours, to stalk this herd. And so I'm just sitting with this dead elk in the middle of the darkness, with a little like headlamp. And I'm sure if my dad hears this, he's gonna be like, "Oh, I gave him a headlamp, and he had a rifle. He's good," because that's just how you grew up, back then. You're good. And I was terrified. Like I thought for sure a bear or a mountain lion or something was just gonna come and just maul me over this, this elk. And and it seemed like hours. My dad probably ran way back, and it was, it was probably 30 minutes or something like that.
Right.
And you see the headlights coming over the hill, and you're just like, oh, God, I'm saved, and load up this cow elk and we're out of there. But like those experiences, man, they just have such a profound impact on you at the time. And you just like, for me, it was just like, well, I survived it. So like, oh, okay, like, cool. Well, this isn't so scary after all. This is like my place. And then by the time I'm like, 14, 15, man, it was just my home. I wasn't afraid of the dark. I wasn't afraid of bears. Wasn't afraid of anything. And you just live it, sleeping on the ground, and it's just your life, and it's all you want to do. I mean, like through high school, all I did was fish and hunt. I didn't even date girls. I was just like, no, you guys are going to cramp my style, and I want to go hunting and fishing this weekend, and I don't want to go hang out with you. Like I want to go fishing. And
Okay, you brought up a really interesting point, and I've never been able to talk about this with people for them to truly understand. Maybe you do, maybe you don't understand this. My biggest fear because I was raised a backpacker. My dad would take me backpacking. My very first backpacking adventure was on the Pacific Crest Trail when I was the summer going into third grade. So I was 7 years old, 8 years old. And I did a section that was probably like 16 miles with my dad. Very first time. Just like I carried a little knapsack. His pack had to have been super heavy. Um, and the very first night staying out in the tent, out in the wilderness, one of the guys who was with my father and his brothers pretended to be a bear outside my tent. Now I'm 7 years old in the middle of the wilderness, never really done this before. I got freaked out. And that traumatized me so much that as I grew up, I was like scared of the dark. Not so much like the dark, but the unknown of the dark.
Right,
And
right.
and bears in the woods absolutely freaked me out to the point where when I became a hunter and ironically I started hunting bears before anything else, I was laying in my tent at night 9 miles in the backcountry being like, oh man, I hope a bear doesn't come into camp at night and be like, wait, no, that would make it easier, right? Like I have my rifle. That's the whole point of why we're here. And so I had to
Yeah.
overcome this fear and really develop my courage through this process. And that's one of the biggest hallmarks and cornerstones of why hunting is so transformational in my life is because
Yeah.
I worked through my courage. Do you feel like you were just naturally courageous because of those experiences as a youth, or did it set you in any different way? Like, oh, that wasn't so bad, so anything I can do.
I don't know. It's a good question. I don't know. I don't know. I said I'm honest, man. Like I am an honest, like what you see is what you get. And I tell you, like when I was experiencing those things as a kid, I was terrified.
Yeah,
Like I'm not gonna sit there and blow smoke up anyone's, shorts and be like, oh yeah, I was 10 years old sitting on a dead elk in the middle of the woods and I was, whittling a stick,
right.
whittling a toothpick to clean my teeth because I was so calm. Like,
Yeah,
no, not even nothing could be further from the truth. Um, but I will say, like, just like that repetition of just like always being out there and doing it just started to like whittle it down, whittle it down. And of course, like your dad saying, "Hey, nothing's gonna bother you.
mm,
Nothing's gonna, yeah." And I remember as a kid, like going fishing with my grandfather at this one lake, and there's bears always in the campground. Well, my grandfather slept in a cab, those cab over campers,
yep.
and then we would pitch these little tiny tents outside. And I remember like all the time my brother just being like, dude, you'd hear these bears walking through camp, like swoofing, you'd hear them. They'd be walking up, sniffing the tent. And you're just like, holy crap. Like, I hope this, you hear stories about people getting attacked by bears. And you're just like, hey bear, or, do you be quiet or do you yell at it? Do you know,
Right.
it's like, is it going to provoke it? Like, you just don't know what to do. You're like a kid alone. Like today, people are like, well, man, that's like child abuse. But it's just like, again, it's a different time. And it's just like, that's how you raised your kids. And, would I do that to my kids, today? Yeah, probably, because it builds character, but I wouldn't do it like grizzly country probably. But like, I said, I can't even tell you the number of times. It is, a handful. It
Yeah,
wasn't like a weekly thing, but in my lifetime as a young kid. And so you're just like, you start to just, I don't want to say get numb to it or get courageous, but you're just like, you just get more comfortable with it, I guess.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and just
Repetition
like, hey,
breeds
yeah,
familiarity.
yeah. And I was like, we didn't have guns. I was like 12, 10, like 8, 9. I don't know how old I was. I was young. I know I didn't have a gun in the tent, and you yell at grandpa to like, there's a bear, and then the bear would go away for 30 minutes and then come back looking for dog food or whatever. So again, it's just like a different time. But I can't say I'm like naturally courageous or whatever. Maybe I was. I don't know. But I think it's just the desire to be out there and the desire to not be afraid and conquer it, and not like this brave, like, oh, I'm just, I'm out here because I'm tough or I'm trying to prove something, just proving it to myself, more than anything, not anybody else, but just, I just want to be comfortable in the woods and not be afraid. And, you know, after, a while, just goes away, I guess. Like, I'm not worried about it anymore.
Do you
Like,
think
it doesn't
that is so? I know you're former law enforcement. Did you used to serve in the military as well?
no, I didn't do the military thing. No, it was just law enforcement.
So do you think that has a little bit to do with your courage or bravery of like you're not afraid of getting in a scuffle or being put in a situation that you're uncomfortable with because you've been put into so many uncomfortable situations
I
prior?
think, I mean, in law enforcement and military, I'm assuming military, in law enforcement, it's like stress inoculation, right? They put you in uncomfortable situations so that you learn how you're going to react and then how to react, you know,
Hmm.
in like an after action. You look back on it and be like, well, hey, you did this, wasn't very smart or wasn't, right. You need to react this way, right? So in law enforcement, you get a lot of that training, that stress inoculation, and just, again, you're just putting yourself through it all. And so that's why I think, I don't know if it's like, I mean, but at the same time, there's people who are like genuinely like fearless in law enforcement. Like, I was on SWAT and served with a lot of solid dudes that were fearless too, right? And you're just like, yeah, we're pulling up on a call, we're probably going to get shot at, or this is probably going to end poorly, just
Mm.
based on the evolving situation. No one, no one, no one got freaked out. No one was like, oh my God, this is, you know, it's just we got a job to do. You just do it.
It's
And
just
bullets
what it
start
is.
flying. This is what it is, right? And so I think there's a part of it that is like that natural. I mean, all those dudes a lot of them are hunters. I think everyone on my team was a hunter,
Interesting.
right? And so it's just kind of, again, it's Montana, so there's a lot of hunters. But I think it's just a lot of that same kind of personality traits, maybe. But then also, we all probably grew up the same way. We're all in that same age class, or roughly. There's some younger guys than me on the team, and but yeah, just outdoorsmen, just kind of the same thing. Like we like that unknown, and that's what I loved about law enforcement. I miss it every day. I want to go back. It's just that unknown when you go into those calls and go into those high priority stuff, the dangerous stuff. Man, it's addicting. It gets under your skin. It gets in your blood. It's fun. It's crazy fun, and you know. It's just hard to explain unless you go out and you're a
Yeah.
cop and you go out and do it. You're like, yeah, that was fun. That was cool times.
That makes sense. Hey, you
It definitely
mentioned,
shapes it for sure.
yeah, I believe that. You mentioned earlier that you trap, and I see you got a couple skunks on your back wall, and what are those, foxes or coyotes?
Oh, there's some gray foxes right there and coyotes, and then there's some red foxes over here, and then off camera there's a bunch of coons, otters, beaver, mountain lion, bear, lynx, wolverine, and bobcat.
Sweet. Do you
A little bit
believe
of
trapping makes you a better hunter?
100%.
Can you talk about that? Expand on that a little bit.
Yeah. So like growing up in Arizona, trapping wasn't an option, right? It was legal. It was banned in the 80s, based on, early political, biology, or politics. And it so that kind of stuff. But I was introduced to trapping from a guy in Arizona, and he talked about it, and it just sounded like the coolest thing ever, right? We couldn't do it, but just his stories and talking about it, I was like, man, one day, like, I'm gonna learn how to trap.
Yeah.
And then 5 years later, I'm moving to Montana, and I'm like, man, I'm gonna learn how to trap. So I got in with some buddies up here that I met when I first moved up here, and first thing I started trapping was marten, and really cool winter sets up in trees with like frozen chunks of beaver or squirrel, and building these little houses. And man, it's just a lot of fun. Just a lot of work, cold, a lot of snow, a lot of digging trucks out of snow. A lot of fun. And then I'm a kind of a self-taught, I guess I want to say self-taught, but I watched YouTube and trapping videos, and just kind of started learning how to do dirt hole sets for coyotes and foxes, and water sets for beaver, and 330 Maniac on YouTube. I learned a lot about water trapping from that dude. And it just it just was like it's like hunting, but on the next level, because you're not just going out looking for an animal like, oh, hey, look, there's a bear, or there's a deer, or there's an otter, or there's a beaver, right? You're going out trying to find their home, where they live, and you're putting all these pieces together, right? You got to be way smarter than a hunter. Trappers are way smarter, I think. Guys that are really good at it, anyways, because you're going looking at a pond and going, okay, yeah, there's beaver here because I saw a beaver. All right, well, where does a beaver live? What does it eat? and how does it move around, and where are the places that I have the best chance at getting it to go in between these two sticks,
Mm-hmm.
or getting it to step in this exact spot. And that, the first couple of years, man, I was just like getting my teeth kicked in. Like, man, I set up game cameras on my traps because I thought people were messing with them. Because I'd
Oh,
find these
really?
traps, I'd find them fired, like they went off, but there's nothing in it. Or I'd find the trap flipped over, not fired. And I'm like, how in the heck does this happen? Well, red foxes would sneak in, and coyotes would sneak in on my sets, and they'd walk around it, sniff it, figure out where the trap was, and they'd just dig it up.
Wild.
And
Wild.
so then it just was like, all right, dude, this is like next level. These critters are smart. And so it just became a huge passion of mine. And unfortunately, the last couple of years, with all the development and growth in Montana, all the lands and private properties I trapped all got sold to people who don't believe in hunting and trapping. So I lost all my access. And I just found out one of the last properties I trapped beavers and otters on just got sold. So I just lost that access too. So sucks.
Oh, bummer.
My
Bummer.
son is my son is 8, and he is like a reincarnated version of Jeremiah Johnson. He just loves trapping, loves mountain man, has a 50 cal Hawken, and he just lives in the woods. I mean, he literally lives in the woods after school. Like, I don't even know where he's at. He just is gone, like just disappears, and is living the best life. But and he loves trapping. So that was it's just been one of those things that we just do together now.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be pretty hardcore and regimented, had huge line that I would drive out and run, but I don't do that as much anymore. Just keep it a little bit smaller and easier for the kids. Because it's just they enjoy it. It's like Christmas, getting out there and check the traps. It's a lot of fun.
Right. So
It's just this next level, man. It's getting enough knowledge base of an animal to get it to where it steps on your 2-inch square, or walks into a snare, or I mean, I said snaring in live or like snaring in like big conibears and stuff like that, or I don't want to say easier, but getting them to step on a buried trap and like actually step where you want is it's the pinnacle, man. Like I think trapping some of the smallest birds on my wall, I look back on them like, man, that was huge, like huge accomplishment for me. And I think most trappers would say the same thing. The first time you set a trap and you're like, I am gonna catch something in this trap. I finally pieced it together, and then like 24 hours later, you come out there and bam, there's a coyote or a bobcat in that set. You're just like, yes. And then you start piecing it together, man. It's just so much fun.
so this winter I got really busy with just different things, and I didn't get to trap intentionally winter fur like I wanted to. I have a
Mhm.
big old bobcat on my lease, my deer lease, that I have to get. But I'm from the state of Washington originally, and up there you can't use conibears. You have to live trap in
Yep.
in in boxes, cages. And so I have a cage trap from the state of Washington that I brought down here, and my buddy Sam, who you met at SHOT Show, he's like, "Dude,
Oh yeah.
you're never gonna get a bobcat in that." I'm like, I mean, people do it in Washington, like it's got to be able
People
to
do it
be
all
done,
over.
yeah. And
Yeah.
he's like, "Yeah, well, okay." So we set up this trap. I set a game camera on it, and because I'm like, I got one trap. It's 40 minutes just to get to my lease. That's a lot of back and forth driving just to check one trap. It wasn't like I was checking a whole trap line. So I set a camera on it, and I'd see activity that was going on. And the state of Washington, everyone was like, when I got into trapping, they're like, "Oh yeah, beaver meat. That makes the best bait. Got to get some beaver meat." I'm like, "Well, you can't hunt beaver. So how
No.
does a guy go about getting beaver meat if I don't even know how to trap yet?" That's the whole, like, what came first, the chicken or the egg
Oh,
concept.
totally.
And so
Totally.
this last year, I set up my box trap, and I had this big old bobcat nose the front of my trap, but it never walked in. And I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna get you. I'm gonna get you." And I had a couple
Yeah.
different trappers on podcasts talking about it, and Byron Nelson. You know Byron Nelson, or excuse
Yeah.
me, Byron South, not the golfer, Byron South. Um,
Yeah.
dude, awesome guy, very knowledgeable. He was telling me all about stuff, and Sam, he's been trapping, and so I'm trying to pick up the ways of the southern way from him. And one of the cool things about Texas is you can trap year round. Like okay, let's get some actual practice going on. Yeah, we want a good winter fur, but ultimately, like to learn a skill set and not be restricted to 2 months or
Oh yeah.
however long the season is, it's pretty awesome. So that was my experience with trapping. But just recently, this is like 3 weeks ago, after SHOT Show, driving up the road, and I saw a freaking dead beaver on the side of the road. And I was like, no way. Had my three boys in the car, whipped the truck around, pulled over on the bar ditch, and I was like, oh, that's a fresh kill. So I grabbed this whole beaver, and I drove back to my house. I put it in my freezer, and I was like, boys, we got beaver meat, finally. So once I thaw that out and skin it, because only its head got crushed, um,
Oh,
be
nice.
able to put that out for some bait.
You
Anyways,
should try if the meat's still good, if it was fresh and it's good, you should try some of the meat. It's pretty good.
I've heard that. I didn't know. I'm not sure about eating roadkill. I mean, obviously we'll skin it.
I've eaten a bunch of roadkill. I've eaten
Well,
I don't know how many
let me say this.
dozen deer I picked up off the side of the road and cut the straps and hind quarters off of.
I will say I've had roadkill deer. I even have a video on my YouTube channel about what to do with roadkill deer.
Oh, nice.
But small game, like I don't know, something that a whole tire could smash.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so when you trap one, they're pretty good. Even bobcat. Bobcat's really good meat. Just like mountain lion. It's one of the you know, um, underutilized trophies, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'm sipping on a little whiskey right now, a little Colonel E.H. Taylor small batch. Uh, your Instagram handle's Pap Winkle. You care to divulge how that even came about? You're a big whiskey fanatic, or at least you used to be, huh?
Yeah. So back when I was in Arizona, back when you could get Pap Winkle like relatively easily, there was still like the drops, like they have now, but that are just like unattainable, right? Because the people that have it know the value, and it's just ridiculous, right? The price of the bottle has not really increased in the 20 years, but it's ridiculous.
Mm.
And so back then, I would drink a lot of, I say a lot, but when I drank whiskey, we drank Pap 20, and it was like $100 bottle. And when it would come available, we would buy up what we could. That's just what it was. It was just what we enjoyed. Pap 15 too. I think Pap 15 is better personally. But yeah, just what we did. And then it just got chaotic. And now I've sold bottles of it that I had for obscene amounts of money and traded for really, really fine rifles. But so I'm glad I got crazy, but I'm not. It's kind of a double-edged sword. But with the reason the handle on thing was I was in law enforcement and I just didn't want my name out there. So I just created that handle just to, you know, have my page and do my gun stuff without having my name out there, just for law enforcement. Just didn't want, you know, the name out there for whatever reasons. Is just kind of what I did, and
Yep.
kind of took off and kind of stuck. So
Love it. Love it. What's it like working in the hunting industry after being firearms or even, growing up as a hunter being like, "Oh, dude, I work in the industry now."
So yeah, I mean, went from hunting, and then I spent a lot of time guiding. I was a big game guide in Arizona, and had did that a whole bunch. Realized that wasn't the thing that I wanted to do, and then started working in the industry. Started kind of building custom rifles. Started dabbling in writing, and then got into law enforcement once I got up to Montana, and started my family, whatnot. So continued the writing through that, and then got to the point to where it was time to come out and spend some time with the family. So really doubled down in the industry as a full-time freelance writer, and then just got my newest job with OSG, or the Shooting Times magazine, and firearms news is a new thing for me, just to be the digital side. I've always been like testing stuff and writing, and it's awesome, man. I mean, you get to meet awesome people. The reason I really got into it and what drives me is being able to share information and knowledge that most people don't have, access to, or the experience of, like unbiased, source of information. Like, I'm not a sponsored shooter. I'm not, affiliated with a company that's paying me to say things. Like, what I feel and what I think is, from my experiences. We all have them. but that's what I do. I don't play sports. I don't, I don't watch TV. I don't do anything. I shoot, I fish, I trap, I reload, I test bullets, I test rifles. Like that's all I've done for like the last 20 years. Um, so it's just people, and it's all started from that Pap Winkle stuff is where it really took off. Like people just really had a lot of questions, just because they were getting an honest answer. Like, yeah, this is my experience, XYZ, whatever it was. And I really liked it. And writing allowed me to get it out there into magazines and to kind of access more people in terms of sharing that wealth of information and whatnot from my experiences. And then I get to meet a lot of cool people like yourself and all the buddies we hung out with at SHOT Show are all just people that, man, if I stayed in law enforcement, I probably wouldn't have met none of them, like any of them, right?
Yeah.
And went down a different path. So things happen for a reason, but super fortunate to be in it. As much as, I get frustrated with sometimes, the industry, because it, SHOT Show's a crazy, crazy place. But yeah, it's a fun place to be in and work in. I'm very fortunate to be where I'm at and to, like I said, get to hang out with a lot of really cool people and learn a lot of really cool stuff from other people.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense a lot. What is your where are you in your journey as a hunter? Like, would you rather take somebody out and see them have their first successes, or are you still in the pursuit of, like the trophy class animals? Um, or are you more just glad to just be able to get out and fill the freezer?
Um, I love it all. Like I love filling the freezer, especially with my kids now. Like I'm more interested in like teaching them and really spending time with them and honing their skills and not just like I refuse to let my kids shoot deer from the road or from the truck or in a private field. Like I'm just not going to let my kids, for me in Montana, this is just my perspective. Like I want them to really work for it and earn it. And so they have that sense of like accomplishment, which is like, man, like my daughter this year, she didn't get a deer. It's her first year deer hunting legally in Montana, and she didn't get a deer because she passed like tons of deer. She can shoot a doe. She can shoot any deer she wanted. And she passed does. She passed spikes. She passed 2 points, 3 points, 4 points. I mean, she passed bucks because she wanted to get a nice one. And I just thought it was the coolest thing ever that she was just being selective. Because when I was 10 years old, if my dad said I could shoot a doe, the first doe that walked in front of me would have got smoked.
Done.
Right?
Yeah.
Done. Just done. I was a killer. And I mean, I've had a good career. I mean, there's guys out there that have killed way more stuff than me, no doubt, bigger stuff. I just, I enjoy it, but I definitely personally enjoy hunting like age class. I don't really care about the size of the antlers as much. I was like hunting old, mature animals that have just been around, a long time and are savvy. That's what I prefer to hunt. But yeah, I mean, if I'm meat hunting, yeah, I'm going to shoot a young cow elk or a young, deer
Right.
is going to taste better. But yeah, I like it all. I like teaching. I love taking people on their first hunt and teaching them the ways when they want. Like you said, there's takes two, like people that want to learn how to hunt. They don't just want to drive around and shoot something from a pickup truck. That's not necessarily my style. I don't, people want to do it. I don't care. You do you. But yeah, I just like doing it all and being out there.
Yeah. I will say I've had a lot of experiences with people when they'll reach out because of my platform, and I'll connect with them and I'll give my cell phone number and be like, dude, reach out anytime. Obviously, text message is quicker to respond to than a
Phone call.
10, 15, 30-minute phone call.
Right.
But I'm here, and I'll maybe get like one or two interactions and then they fall off. And I don't know if that's just more of like people nowadays or a representation of whatever it could be. Um, but the whole like, if you want to see it through, I want to see it through with you, and I'm willing to. But I don't know what you don't know, and I can keep talking and keep talking and keep talking. But it's best as a school teacher. I know, like I need to, uh, inspire the questions, right? Like you deliver the questions that you feel like you want to know, rather than me telling you stuff that you already have learned.
Yep.
and let's go down that road. So it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I man, Colton, you and I could record for a long time, and I definitely am going to have you on again some point
We
here in
didn't
the
get very
future.
far.
Dude, I know, but dude. We're an hour into this, and I'm like, okay, I got a whole lot more questions, and we could go for another, half hour, or whatever. But um, I wanna honor your time and take care of you, and then also at the same time, I like to not make it too long for the listeners. All you listeners, you can give me feedback. You let me know if you want longer episodes or not. But Colton, what's your ultimate animal that you love to hunt? Like the one that you look forward to year after year?
And my son was just asking me this question yesterday. And, I'm a big black bear hunter. I love hunting black bears. I was like getting out and glassing them, and I just think they're the coolest animal. Um, and I hunt deer and elk, every year. Elk in Montana sucks, in my opinion. It's not a fun hunt. There's just not a lot of them. So it's not a it's just not as much fun, just in my experience.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
when I do draw antelope tags out here, I really do enjoy hunting antelope. I love eating them. I love hunting them. You get to hunt them all day. They're out in the open and they don't really take a break. So it's just a lot of fun to hunt all day and find them. And you get to pass a lot of them and really look for age class. They're super easy to find, you know, super easy to find, and it's super easy to articulate like a young one from an old one. Like there's no like mistaking, the patterns and the coloration, not necessarily just antlers or horns, but so antelope and black bear, man. A turkey, man, they get me every spring when those birds, my local yard birds just started gobbling the last week or so. There's still a ton of snow on the ground, and those toms just already got me fired up. The first time I walked out, slammed my door, and heard them gobble, I was like, oh. But they're off limits. They're just yard birds. They're stupid. You can call them in by whistling. That's how dumb they are. I mean, and those things will gobble and come running down. You just
man.
set it up.
Okay, I gotta just say, I've never killed a turkey in the springtime. Never. I've gone a few times. They've always eluded me, and people that will say like, "Oh yeah, man," like they just are stupid and will come in like I don't know where they are at when I'm hunting, but
Turkeys that are accustomed to people, like my birds, like people feed them. They eat out of people's bird feeders. They're not afraid of people. That's why I won't even let my kids shoot them. It's like, dude, it's not a true testament of a turkey. Because I grew up hunting turkeys in Arizona, the Miriams. Man, those things were wily. They were so smart, so spooky. Man, if you moved wrong, or you burped, you did anything out of nature, man, those birds are gone,
yeah.
locked up, gone. And so that's what really, again, as a young hunter, that's what really set turkeys into mode for me. And like I said, I guided elk hunts for a long time. I like elk, but just doesn't flip my trigger as much anymore as turkeys and bears and the antelope. And they're all just so different, but if I had to pick one, it would probably be bears, just because I think they're cool and they can kill the crap out of you real quick if they wanted to.
Oh yeah. I love that. Not many people are bear hunters. We got to stick together and we got to promote it. I actually every year I do a bear hunting 101 seminar down at Western Hunt Expo in Salt Lake City.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, big fan of bear hunting. That's actually I got my very first published article in Bear Hunting Magazine. So I
Sweet.
love doing outdoor riding as well, and bear hunting was my jam. I was a high school football coach. Bear hunting a season opened 2 weeks before football started. I could never dedicate more than maybe a Saturday and a Sunday or half a Sunday to deer or elk or whatever, but I could dedicate time to bear hunting, and that's how I got into hunting. Was
Nice.
was
Well,
that
I'll tell you what, man. You find some people that want to go bear hunting, and I'll help you apprentice some bear hunters up here in Montana, because you can just buy the tag over the counter.
perfect?
We could do a bear hunting. Teach
How
some people how to.
I'm gonna we'll talk about this off the air because I'm planning on going to Idaho this year for bear hunt, but I know Montana's been on the bucket list for a while, so I might have to make my way
Idaho's
out there.
Idaho's Idaho's great too. I haven't hunted it as much. I used to hunt it a little bit more, back in the day, but I haven't hunted it in the last couple of years. But Idaho's great too. I mean, bear hunting, I was like being out there.
No doubt, no doubt. Brother, is there anything you want to leave for the listeners? Like if you were parting with them, words of wisdom or words of motivation, what would you leave the listeners with?
Man, putting me on the spot.
I know. Like to see how quick you can think on your feet.
Oh man, I would say just based on like the questions and the stuff I get on Instagram like daily. I was just talking with a guy like literally before we came on here. He had a lot of questions about things he'd seen on social media and stuff like that. Just raised a lot of questions for him. And like I told him, it's just like, man, it's awesome that you're asking questions and you're questioning people's like logic and questioning things people say. It's like that doesn't make sense, right? Or like, why are you the only one saying like XYZ? Like just feeling people out and just feeling all the information out. There's a lot of information out and accessible to people. Question it all.
Mm,
I mean, I tell people all the time, question me. If I say something and I say, man, I would do this. This is what I believe. Question that too. Question everybody. You
yeah.
know, and find your own truths. Is a huge thing that helps people. Like, don't just take everything at face value for information that you see out there, because there's a lot of hard information that isn't necessarily going to help you or benefit you.
Hmm.
Yeah, there may be some truth to it, but you're just going down a rabbit hole. It's never ending. So just really find out like what really matters to you as a hunter or to a shooter or a fisherman or whatever, your aspect is in the outdoors, and get as much information and data as you can, but figure out your own truths and really kind of piece it all together and find out what works. And you start seeing a bunch of guys that line up that are respected people in the industry, say, hey, like these things, and everything kind of starts lining up. Like that's probably a good path to go down. But when you get these weird outliers and these weird things, and lately it's been coming up more and more where I get guys questioning like, man, what is this? Why am I hearing this? And it's just crazy. It's just nonsense, and we could go in, like I said, it's a dark rabbit hole we could go down forever. You start getting into calibers and rifles and all the stuff that's going on now with bullets and stuff, and all the arguments and controversies about hang with small stuff, or you have to have big stuff, and you have to use match bullet. I mean, there's so much, don't use copper bullets. They suck. There's just so many opinions out there, but most of them are just that. They're just an opinion. There's nothing really supportive behind it.
Mm. I love that.
Question it up.
I love that. I asked, and we'll wrap up the podcast here with this. I asked Seth Swerzik, host of the Hornady podcast, and Preston. They came on the show at SHOT Show, and I said, "All right, fellas, if I was to ask you just one caliber, I don't. That's hard to choose. But if you were to choose your favorite long action, short action, and then carving length, what calibers would you be shooting?"
Oh man, long action. Man, I've always been a 300 Win Mag fan. It's always been hard to beat in my books, but as of late, I've been a 7 PRC. I know people hate it. I think there's people that hate it just because it's Hornady. They they just hate it. These haters are hating whatever.
There's a sex appeal to that round. It
It's
just
just
looks
it just
good.
freaking works, man. I just
Yeah.
got a Unknown Munitions just built me a 7 PRC with a 20-inch barrel, and that rifle freaking hammers. It is the most accurate rifle. Like, and I've shot a lot of rifles,
Yeah.
and that thing is a stud. And I just love it. So yeah, man, I'm backing off my 300 Win Mag a little bit more and more these days, just because the 7mm just been doing it for me. Short action, dude, 22 Creedmoor all day long.
I say the same thing. That is such a phenomenal round.
And if like, it's just, like I said, we talked about, I went to Africa with it, and it changed my perspective on a lot of things. I've killed some stuff with it in North America, and it was deadly. It worked extremely well. I can't say it didn't kill everything as quickly as 300 Win Mag or whatever else. Um, it's an awesome round.
This is my 22 Creedmoor right here, built on a
Nice.
Kelbley's Nanook action.
Oh, I love that action. That's a great action.
So great. 18-inch preferred carbon barrel, Huxworks 7.62 flow. I mean, just phenomenal.
Yeah.
We're about to put it to use this weekend. We're filming our first episode of season 6 of Soul Seekers. Got my
Nice.
buddy from North Dakota driving all the way down. We're gonna go put him on his very first pigs, teach him the
Sweet.
ways of southern hunting, because it hunting, like, you learn eastern whitetail and then you go out west, you're like, oh dude, I feel so lost. Me learning western hunting and then going towards the east and the south, I feel like I have a leg up, but then I also feel like I'm speaking a different language. It's
Yeah.
like, oh man, I understand animal movement, but now my movement's restricted. How do I end up, navigating and working access and hunting specific animals and target species? Really fascinating. Okay, so
Yeah.
22 Creedmoor. Totally agree. Absolutely, absolutely love that cartridge.
What was the other one you asked? What, the carbine?
Yeah, carbine. If you're AR platform.
Oh man. Right now, 22 arc.
Uh-huh.
That's just, man, it's it smokes a 223 like all day long, and you're getting way better bullets, like first like bullet performance, way higher velocities. um I just built I built one a while ago and it shot pretty good, and then I just put a pre-fit 22 arc barrel on there, and then I just got some new um captured springs, like the captured buffer springs from JP Enterprises,
Uh-huh.
to replace the spring and stuff. It's all one piece unit. Game changer. Holy
Really?
crap! It silenced that rifle. You don't hear that, of that gun cycling every time. It's silent. It's just like this. It just deadens it. Totally changes the recoil, impulse, and I mean, it's still super reliable, super accurate. But just, man, ever since I put that thing in that buffer tube, I'm like, oh man, this is living. Um, I really like it. I mean, the 223 is awesome. I carried one in law enforcement for a long time. I like it, but man, that 22 arc is a spicy little number and a gasser. It's hard to beat, in my opinion.
That's beautiful. All right, I got one last question, just because
Yeah.
it popped in my head. Speed kills. Yes or no? Do you chase speed?
So to a point, yes. I will not sit there and lose sleep over 50 feet per second like some guys will. Like I've had guys like, well, I don't want to do that because it's only going to be 2,900 feet per second, and I have to have 2,950. Like, whatever. Like I'm not going to obsess about that. But the last couple years, shooting smaller stuff, really getting those 3,200, 3,300, 3,400 feet per second, muzzle velocities, and watching what they do on animals. It's pretty impressive. I mean, I've always been a fan of the 2250. That rifle right back there, the bottom
The
one,
bottom one?
the bottom one's 2250, 2250, 300 Win Mag, and 308. Those are the last three rifles I built when I was a custom builder. That 2250 is a hammer, and that thing has, dude, I don't even know the body count on that rifle. The barrel's just about shot out. It's an old Krieger. 55 grain nozzle ballistic tips going 3,600 feet per second. That thing has killed a ton of stuff. And I don't know why, like even back then when I was shooting stuff with it, it's just like, well, that's cool. But the mindset back then was, well, you got to have a bigger gun, right? Because obviously you're not going to shoot that very far because the wind deflection on that bullet sucks, right?
Right.
It's just not going to work out. If it hits, it's going to be deadly, but it's just getting it on target, right? So you go to bigger, higher BC bullets, right? But yeah, I've loved it and I love that thing. But now that I've been shooting like sixes and some 6.5s, but mostly sixes and 22s with those high BC bullets, and not just high BC match bullets. Like I've really been liking the monolithics, from like McGuire ballistics and Hammer. The CX from Hornady is one of my favorite hunting bullets. Like those things, and even in 22s and sixes and 6.5s, man, they freaking stomp animals. And those lighter weights going higher velocities. I've been super impressed with the lethality on those bullets lately. And I think a lot of people that are anti that are basing it on that 50 and 55 grain, 52 grain, that older, slower twist rate, really fast, small bullets that, yeah, they weren't as ideal. But a 75 grain ELDM is nothing compared to a 52 grain, ballistic tip as far as like a long range killer for, everything in North America. I mean,
Yeah.
it's crazy how lethal those rounds are. It's insane.
Does Montana have a caliber restriction?
No. I
So
mean,
you can
20,
take the 22 Creedmoor out and
22s
hunt
and
with it.
bigger.
Okay.
Right. That's
Yeah.
what I hunted with last year. We shot 2 antelope with 22 creeds. I shot my deer with a 7 PRC just because I got that new rifle from Unknown and I had to hunt with it. But 2 antelope we stomped out with 88 grain ELDMs going 3,200 feet per second. I shot mine at like 100 yards and it was overkill. It was devastating. And then my wife shot hers at just under 400 with a kick-ass wind, and she just stoned that thing. I mean, you couldn't kill that antelope faster with any other. I mean, it was dead on. It just fell over dead. It didn't even kick.
Yeah.
Just stoned it right through the shoulder and just rolled that thing. It didn't even flicker. It was awesome. So yeah, speed kills. I mean, it's a huge controversy right now, and next podcast we can go down a rabbit hole on that stuff. But yeah,
I think that would be a great follow-up. And I think we should do that probably at the beginning of summer as people are starting to like wrap their heads around what they're going to be planning for the fall. Let's do a speed kills podcast.
I like it. I'm doing an article right now that'll be out in Peterson's Hunting Special Interest publication, The Precision Hunter, and it's about how you should select your rifle and build your rifle ideas or bullets that you're going to shoot, not buy a rifle and try to find bullets that it wants to shoot, because twist rates aren't always going to jive, and people get super frustrated when they buy a gun and they're like, well, I want to shoot this bullet. Well, the twist rate's way too slow, right? A lot of manufacturers are starting to increase the twist rates in their guns, but just a different look about bullets, performance on game, cartridges, their applications, and then what to look for on a rifle to piece it all together. And I don't know, sound like a good article in my head. I got approval to write it, so we'll see. But it'll be a lot of information on all that stuff. But yeah, I'd love to talk with you more about it.
Love it, brother. We talked briefly about your Instagram handle at Papwinkle. Where else can people find your stuff?
That at Papwinkle is like my gun stuff, and that's what I do. My other kind of business is the Fly Rifleman. So the Fly Rifleman on Instagram is my fly fishing stuff. I do a lot of guiding up here in Montana for fly fishing for trout, pike, bass, all that stuff. So a lot of fly fishing content on there just to kind of separate it out. So Papwinkle and the Fly Rifleman.
Beautiful. I love it. You're a stud. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on the podcast, Colton. I really appreciate it, brother. Look forward to getting you back on for a Speed Kills episode. That'll be super exciting. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode, thank you so much for, first of all, tuning in. But go give it a thumbs up. Like it, share it, subscribe. Leave a rating, leave a comment, as all that stuff helps continue sharing our mission of mentorship as conservation. For Johnny Mack and Colton Bagnoli, be blessed, freedom on. Remember that life is happening for you. It's not happening to you. We're not playing victim in this world. Be the change you want to see in this world. I'll catch you on the next episode. Freedom on. And as always, stay soulful. If you enjoyed today's podcast and want to support the show, you can always like, share, subscribe, and leave a rating, as it helps us share our mission of mentorship as conservation. Thank you so much for tuning in and being a part of Soul Seekers Nation as we transform lives through primal adventure.